What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. Got a great guest on today, probably one of the most intelligent dudes that I'll probably ever have on this show. Knows the system like the back of his hand, been through a lot, done a lot, pretty well-known dude. But anyway, Kyle, tell the people who you are, where you're from, and we're going to get into your story.
Yeah, so my name's Kyle. I'm originally from Michigan, Upper Peninsula, small town. Uh, have lived in Minnesota, which is where I reside now, freshly released, and trying to get a message out, man. I followed this YouTube channel, and I appreciate the raw intensity of what it's really like to be where we've been and through the things that we've been through. And the struggle's real, man. PTSD is real. It doesn't just apply to people that have been in the military or POWs or in car accidents or domestic situations. People that have been to the penitentiary, man, suffer, and I think this is a good platform for people to unite under and get the message out to keep children from having to go through what we went through.
100%, and I appreciate that. I'm going to talk about, your story. Where'd you grow up at, Kyle?
I grew up in a small town called Escanaba, Michigan. Population in the whole county probably 12,600 roughly.
What's your life like growing up there? What are your parents like? Is it a good family?
Family life is much like many people's. A lot of people are, belong to broken homes, man, and I was no exception. My childhood wasn't as rough as some, but it led me down the wrong path. I grew up in a small town, not a lot of diversity, playing sports, watching sports, following every sport you could imagine, family reunions, holidays with family members, your typical small town upbringing. At 12 years old, I was put out of my home by my mother, and I was relocated to Minnesota, where I was put into the youth system, foster homes, in and out of juvenile facilities. Started getting into drug use at a young age, and just really, by the time I was 17, was a broken shell of a person.
And eventually you end up catching a case, you go to federal prison. What are you on your way to federal prison for, and how old were you at the time?
Yeah, so I had at 17, I had caught a state case, breaking and entering, larceny of firearms, and I stole a car. Um, when I went to state prison, I had all of us have these demons that haunt us, things that we got away with or we think we got away with. And 18 months into my state sentence, I was indicted by the government for attempted armed robbery, specifically of a pharmacy. And I had a 924C, subsection C. Anyone been to the feds knows it's use and discharge of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime. I got 10 more years, the mandatory minimum, added on to my state sentence consecutive. I sat in state prison from '04 to '06 in Michigan Department of Corrections, and then was paroled to the U.S. Marshal's custody. Being from Michigan, I was brought to Wayne County Jail. For those of you who don't know, that's downtown Detroit. Not no place to be, especially for a young white guy. Luckily, my Fed case and my time in the state had kind of given me some type of, cred in that county jail. And then I took off, man, to a journey that led me to where I'm sitting right now. I went into the feds November 8th, 2000, or no, yeah, November 8th, 2006 is when I paroled. And, from there, the journey began, from the airlift to Oklahoma City to everything that would follow, for over the course of the next 12 years.
How old are you when you walk into this federal prison? When you actually walk into federal prison, how old are you?
So I'm 21 when I walk in. I was 21 years old, probably I just turned 21. My birthday is in October. And, I had heard the stories, a couple guys, state prison, that were from California, kind of tried to tell me what I was in for. And being young and having been in juvenile facilities in the Midwest at that, politics are different between the Midwest, the Northeast, Central region, as opposed to West Coast, down South politics. And so I had a very narrow-minded perspective about what I was about to encounter.
Your first prison?
My first prison. So you get to Oklahoma City, they tell you where you're designated. They tell me FCI McKean, which is a medium. Uh, I had thought that I would get closer to Michigan, but when I had arrived there, I realized that, probably 35% of the population was from Michigan, another 30% from Ohio, and then the remaining New York, Pennsylvania. So I technically was within my region.
So you're in McKean. What's it like? Gang members approach you. I mean, other
Uh,
dudes. What's life like at McKean?
so to get to McKean, you got to go through Lewisburg. Back then, Lewisburg was like a hub. They would hold you in Lewisburg, regardless of what custody level you were. And we used to go upstairs above R&D, and there was like a dormitory setting up there. When I got up there, you had a couple 12-man rooms, and then you had an open bay. I happened to land in a 12-man room, instantly was immediately aware of racial politics that I had never encountered, because in this 12-man room, only white guys were allowed to go into this room. And then there was rooms for other cars from other areas of the country. And that was new to me. I had rode in there with an Italian guy. He probably don't want his name on here, but anyways, he was from Brooklyn and knew he was on a RICO case. And I had never experienced any kind of diversity other than juvenile facilities. So meeting somebody who was involved with made guys and being in federal prison, and all of a sudden there's these rules about, you know, race. That was my first experience um, with what I was about to encounter later on in my life. But I sat there for 3 weeks, went, took the bus to McKean. Um, had this guy who I had kind of befriended. So when I had got there, I was immediately introduced to New York guys, Boston guys, a couple of the Michigan guys that were homeboys that were in my unit. But no gang members. I didn't run in, other than with like your Latino gangs and some of the black gangs. I didn't encounter white gangs yet. It was just broken down into cars.
And your stay at McKean doesn't last too long. How long are you at McKean?
I was on the yard there. Let's see, I went to the hole in March of 2007. So I was on the yard there approximately 3.5 months. Um, kind of like on the right path, was determined to try to turn my life around. But I was fooling myself. I had a long stretch to do. You know, when you're around wolves, you got to howl like a wolf. And despite it being an FCI and considered soft compared to some of the places that you and I have been, um, it was still prison. And there was people there that, for the sake of not wanting to get deported back to their own country, would put a knife in you just so they could stick around and do time in the U.S. So it still had elements of what we would call penitentiary life. Um, yeah.
What do you go to the hole for, Kyle?
So, I've always been aware of the whole code. You don't rat, you don't tell, you don't be a jailhouse snitch. And I had a cellie who, not only was he disrespectful cellie, shitting in the toilet, not flushing. I come in, there's shit in the toilet. Uh, just very dirty, unclean, everything that, most of us are taught and kind of trained not to do, he was doing. And then, the mistake that he ended up making that caused my reaction was he was dropping kites on me. I was getting tattooed on, which was not allowed in a FCI. They will crack your head for it, give you a shot for it. And I was holding this guy's tattoo equipment so that he could, work on me for free. That was part of the deal. And my cellie didn't like it. And he had vocalized that, but instead of dealing with it man to man, he started dropping kites on me. So now I'm getting shook down. I got all these, different COs coming and looking for tattoo stuff, and the counselor calling me out, looking at my arm, and he leaked it to me, man. He told me, he's like, your cellie don't want you in there. Whatever you're doing, you need to stop doing. And I don't think that he was expecting what that led me to. But long story short, um, it had some blowback, and we had these Mexican guys that were ready to do bad things to this guy for his behavior. And a part of me didn't want to see that happen. Um, and so I took actions in my own hands. Ended up calling the guy in the cell, fought him heads up. It didn't go his way. Ended up out on the tier. I took it a little too far. He ended up going to the outside hospital for attention. And I ended up in the hole, man, with a 101. For those you don't know, serious assault, usually with a weapon. There was no weapon involved. And yeah, I was waiting for my shot to come back from the FBI to see if they're going to prosecute me or they're going to let it go. And fortunately, they let it go. I sat in hole for 7 months, and then I got transferred again.
Transferred again, and this is probably when life gets real, right? Where do you end up going from McKean?
So from McKean, I ended up going to USP Coleman 1. Uh, there's two there for everyone that's been there knows. But at the time, I didn't know what USP Coleman 2 was. So it didn't really mean anything to me. And I went to Oklahoma City again, as always. I had to go back through Lewisburg. But upon my travels back through Lewisburg, instead of going to that upstairs penthouse, as we called it, I ended up in G Block in Lewisburg because I was on disciplinary transfer. And at that time, G Block in Lewisburg was the SMU program solely in that unit. And so I got my first feel for real danger and politics and gangs, which that whole unit was nothing but gangs, and specifically gang members that were putting in work that had got enough heat drawn to them where they had to be locked down to do this program. And so I sat there, single cell, which is miserable. Anyone who's been there will tell you it's the worst conditions that any person could ever have to reside in prison. And I left there after 3 weeks, flew to Oklahoma City. They brought me straight to the hole right upstairs because I was on disciplinary transfer. And I was put in a cell with a guy. They called him Bugs. He was in USP Beaumont heading to Coleman 2, which was rare because normally they won't put good guys in a cell with somebody going to a yard that isn't considered a general population yard. But he kind of pointed some things out to me about, the white gangs and what I was about to experience, what was going to be expected of me, the protocols of, not sleeping in, blah, blah, blah. But I sat in there with him for 2 weeks. I thought he was batshit crazy. I thought he was a bug. I had the mentality that there's only one motherfucker on my ID, and no one that's not on that ID is gonna be telling me shit. And yeah, so I sat there, and then I took the plane to Florida, got off the plane at Tampa, and they bus you up there to Coleman.
What's Coleman like when you walk in? I mean, I know this is kind of like your introduction to gang life. I mean, what are they telling you when you get to Coleman? What are the white dudes telling you?
Yeah, so when I get to Coleman, they had just come off lockdown for a body that was whites were involved, and the captain there was a Panamanian guy, and not having experienced a lot of diversity in my life, it's me and one other white guy on the bus. There's probably 22, 23 guys on the bus, and I'm the only one without being blasted full of tattoos. I'm coming from an FCI, so I don't have the repertoire of like, oh, I just came from Victorville, or oh, I just came from Beaumont or Paul Lake or Lee County. I didn't have any uh, history to have any credibility or any kind of reputation.
No prison resume, kind of, right? You don't have a resume.
Exactly. I had no resume. I had nothing to show for nothing other than now what would be considered putting in good work at the FCI. But this captain, I'll never forget, he had us all in the holding cell, and he breaks down his yard, and he tells us, "This is my yard. I don't give a fuck what you guys do. There's good moonshine on this yard. There's good dope on this yard. There's poker on this yard." And he goes on this rant, to make long story short, about how nice. He specifically said, "Welcome to paradise." And I'm thinking to myself, from what I had heard about the penitentiary, the USP, there's no way this place is going to be paradise. Um, and for a man trying to be a civilian and be there for his family and be a productive member of society and for himself, it is no place to be. But for somebody doing over a decade in federal prison, uh, you could have it your way, in a USP at that time. So then he says it all in Spanish. And that's when I discovered, he was a Panamanian guy. Long story short, he lets us out. He tells you beforehand, he says, if there's anything in your jacket, if there's anything fucked up at all, if there's any type of sex offense, any type of informing, any type of seeking protective custody, do not go out to this yard. He tells you flat out, don't go out there. SIS is going to pull you out. They're going to ask you some questions. Alert them right away. We'll get you somewhere you can be safe, and we'll get you the fuck out of here. Because if you go out here with one of these things in your jacket, these boys are going to stab the hell out of you. And you're thinking, again, I'm naive. I'm still ignorant to the federal system. And I'm thinking, this guy's full of shit. You know what I mean? Nice try. You ain't scaring nobody. So they let us out, and they give you a bedroll. You're in Jackie Chan's and khaki pants and a white t-shirt, and you got your bedroll. And as soon as you walk out, anyone knows we got a clear metal detector. And although none of us were capable of having anything on us, we walked through that metal detector. That fucking thing rang up and down it all over the place. COs, yeah, just go ahead, just to let you know how much they really gave a shit about all that. And I walked out to the yard, and there's groups surrounding the corridor door that we come out of. And I'm trying to head to my unit. I was going to A unit. And I just want to get to my unit, put my shit in there, and kind of get my bearings, see what's going to transpire. And anybody knows bus day, the shit's going down. 9 times out of 10, it's a very rare occasion that a bus comes and there isn't some type of blowback. They let the wrong person out. So all these people are grouped up. The white guys are yelling to me, hey, Wood, hey, Wood. And my name's Kyle. So I'm not responding. I'm thinking they're talking to someone else. Although in my heart, I know they're talking to me. I keep going. And then they got more assertive. Hey, motherfucker, you white boy with the ball. Hey, over here. And they're on the fence. They're on the fence side of the yard. I'm on the walk side of the yard. So I walk over to the fence, do the little finger shake, through the fence, introduce myself. They're upset that they were calling me and I didn't respond. And I had to tell them, like, my name's not Wood. I had no idea that it was like a tone of endearment to be called a peckerwood, being white, or a wood, or being in the wood pile. So after I said that to them, they always kind of rolled their eyes. Where are you from? I tell them Michigan, more rolled eyes. Michigan guys didn't really have a very strong presence or good name for themselves in there. And so they tell me, hey, well, look, when they're called a 10-minute move, we're going to come over there. We're going to lace you up, which I have been expecting, because my celly now over here in Oklahoma City had kind of pre-warned me of what the whole rigmarole was going to look like. And so true to their word, before I could even get to my unit, they called a 10-minute move. They cracked the gate and they started letting guys off the yard. And here comes 5 guys, blasted head to toe in tattoos, no fucks to give about demonstrating, what they stood on. People got swastikas, Hitler all over them and whatnot, which I had never seen. And they came right up in my unit. Unbeknownst to me at the time, they didn't even live in my unit. But being the new guy, the other white guy didn't come off the bus. He couldn't come out there. He was one of the ones who had to say, hey, I can't go. You got to put me in the hole. And so they're interrogating me, who was on the bus, any other white guys come. They want to know if it's anybody that can't be on that yard. And they got people on deck to take care of that person if they're out here and they're not supposed to be. So they come right up in my unit. Every one of them were drinking, having a good time. And they come in my cell. They brought me a care package with some shower shoes, some shoes, shorts, sunscreen. You need that shit in Florida. And they start telling me, no sleeping in, man. Be up in the morning. You'll get in trouble for that. And my response was, damn, they'll write you up for sleeping in. And they just laughed and they said, no, we'll come in here and beat your fucking ass if you're in here sleeping when the doors are unlocked. And I was made aware of what else was in my bag that I'm gonna need. Weapons, things that get you by, things that in order to show participation in the environment that you're in, the community that you're about to be a part of. It's sink or swim. You're either gonna accept these rules in this format that they're laying down, or you're going to buck it. And at that point in my life, checking in, which is, going, telling the CO, hey, I got to get out of here. It's not an option. I'm not about to live my life like that. And so falling in line, getting in step was the next best option. And in my mind, the only option. And so that's what I did, man. Next morning I was up, I followed the rules, I met people, and I was introduced to the USPs of the Federal Bureau of Prisons.
What gang were these cats in that approached you?
The first people that I had met were AC guys, predominantly from Texas, but when you go to the federal system, people start popping up from all over. They're looking for anyone to recruit. And then I met A.R.M. There was a couple A.R.M guys there, and that was it for that yard at that time. No other gangs were allowed to be on that yard. There was a TAB guy back when that whole schism was going on, and he lasted maybe 3 days, and he had jumped on a dude that came off the bus. Never seen him again. But other than that, those are the only two like accepted. Those and skinheads for the white gangs were the only two accepted gangs on that yard.
How long before you become a gang member?
I don't mean to play semantics here, but I hate the word gang member only because when I think of gang member, I think of people who are raised in the shit, who come from a hood somewhere, who were out there pushing that flag in society, then ended up in prison and stay with their gang. For me, it was a spiritual thing. I was gravitated towards the A.R.M guys. It was a year and a half, long story short, before I had, became a member of A.R.M. And in that time, prior to signing on for that journey, I was looking around me and seeing where I fit in. And I was very big on physical fitness. I still am. I was very big on education. I had been poking around in different religions, trying to find a spiritual connection, but more in matters of the mind, trying to elevate my mind, trying to turn this shitty situation into a productive, positive event in my life, which it did do. And that's where I found it at. That's where I found my growth. That's where I found my connection, my discipline. Now being around and having what we call brothers, there was accountability. There was mandatory working out, which sometimes when a person is depressed and in prison and away from their family and life seems like it's falling apart, you need that. You need some type of accountability. And when you can't provide it for yourself, you often look for other places to find that. And I found that with them guys that were there. They never encouraged me to waste my life in prison. They never encouraged me to hate other people for the color of their skin, their beliefs, their religion, their cultural traits. And they were protecting the guys on the yard who didn't want to join a gang, who didn't necessarily want to commit their lives to putting in work and gaining a reputation and dabbling in all the politics and being a figurehead or a spokesperson on the yard for white guys. They were kind of, at least the one at the time that I was around and the ones that I was around, they were creating an umbrella, a safety net for guys to gather under to say, we just want to do our fucking time. We want to do what we can to get back to our families. We're going to follow the status quo of politics because we're here and we have to. But we don't want to put a patch on ourselves. We don't want to subordinate ourselves to, being told what to do, being abused, which is what happens oftentimes, man. These guys, they get sucked in because they're lonely and it's a dangerous environment and there's safety in numbers and they get sucked in, but it's their own people that end up abusing and misusing their loyalty,
Let me stop you for a second.
Yeah.
What is it? Aryan Resistance Militia?
So, years ago, 80s, late 80s, throughout the 90s, it took on so many different names, but the name that people identify with, and there the name that's on paperwork is Aryan Religious Movement. Um, you'll hear it called, I know you've heard it called a million different things, um, but that's how it's identified with. Predominantly, most people who are A.R.M are Odinists, not all, but most are spiritual and have some type of religious faith, that they follow. Um, but yeah, that's one of the misconceived things about A.R.M. Yes, it was called that in the late 80s. It was called that throughout some of the 90s. But it went like many things, and many cars of all, even if they don't have a patch or a logo, a lot of things go through change in there.
Talk about the 14 words, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that you talked about, look, they don't teach you to hate people because of their color, but people would say, oh, Aryan Resistance Militia or Aryan Religious Movement. They may very well feel, and other groups, African Americans and Hispanics, they might feel like, hey, this is a racist gang. Anytime that there's a group or an organization or a gang in prison that deals with whites, it's usually the people are like, oh, no, them dudes are racist. So the 14 words, I see a lot of A.R.M dudes with 1488 on them. Tell the people what the 14 stands for, if you can.
Okay, well, the 14 words is a slogan. And it's we must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children. Um, Nowhere in that slogan, and I'm out here living my life. I'm out here trying to live the good life and be a hard worker and pursue success. Nowhere in that slogan, my point is, I'm not here to champion any political position or opinion. I'm not here to promote it, but I am here to give the truth and the facts to people who are actually not so narrow minded as to listen and understand that these are the facts. That slogan was created for people to try to become aware that uh white people do matter too, and the future of our children do matter. um and some people will say, well, that's racist, and I'm not gonna sit and try to argue with people or sway people to one side or the other. That's not my intention. But that's what they are. That's what people united under. And yeah, that's about the gist of that.
Yeah, it's not like a got you moment. I want people to, not have a stereotype about certain issues and not think, hey, these guys are this and these guys are that, and the
Yeah.
blacks hate the whites and the whites hate the blacks and the Mexicans hate the black, because it's not always that way, right?
Yeah, ironically, that's true. I mean, it seems weird to say this, but in federal prison, specifically United States penitentiaries, and I've been to quite a few of them, it is a normally and respectfully accepted position for all people in there to identify with their skin color, to identify with their heritage. It's not People aren't in there like they are out here hating on anyone else for the symbols that they wear, for the beliefs that they have. And a lot of that is because the measure of violence in there is so extreme that people are like, you know what, live and let live. We believe, you got black guerrilla family members in there. Their whole mission is to promote and prosper as a race. They don't give a shit what we're doing over here. They're focused on what they're doing over here and what they can do for theirs and how they can better theirs. La Raza is the same way. uh the Mexicans in there are doing the same thing. The Orientals are doing the same thing. Everybody has an identity, and nobody's hating on each other for who they are, how they were born, and what they're representing, as long as they carry themselves like a man and they're respectful, and they can provide common courtesy. um, that's a hard thing to adjust, getting out of there and coming back to society where people put that stereotype that you're talking about. Like, oh, hey, as soon as people know I've been to federal prison, I could have long sleeves on, not showing any tattoos. As soon as they know I've been to federal prison, he's racist, instantly.
Let's talk about this, right? When you get involved in a car, an organization, a gang, a group, whatever people want to call it, you said you felt this pull, that's where you felt like you belonged. Did you feel like this was your family away from your family, that these were your dudes and that you would do anything for them?
Absolutely. I have had support and loyalty demonstrated to me on a prison yard that society, unless you're going overseas and fighting the wars, society never presents you with the situation to show that kind of loyalty to each other, where it's like, I remember numerous instances where it was like, put your back to my back, swing as hard and as fast as you can, and I'll see you when we get out of the hospital. Like, that was a reality. That was a situation, that I've had standoffs where I had no stake in the fight at all. But because the color of my skin, even if I said, hey, you know what? Fuck this shit. I'm going to be over here on the sidelines. I ain't touching shit. I'm still going to be attacked as if I was standing on the front line, you know?
I ask you about the gang stuff because, you hear so many videos and so many people talk about, gang life, and you see all these younger dudes on social media, gang, 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 and, they talk all that shit. But at the end of the day, we both know a kid that's been highlighted on YouTube on different channels named Ricky Fackrell. Ricky was willing, he was a kid that was getting ready to go home. He was willing to die for his gang. I guess willing to give up his whole life because now he's sitting on death row. You knew Ricky. How many days? I mean, how long was it before he was going home before he ends up killing somebody?
Yeah, I'm pretty certain, don't quote me on it, but from what the conversation that I had with him, he couldn't have had no more than 18 months to 2 years left.
And now he's sitting on death row. Were you willing at one point because of the organization that you were in, the Brotherhood? Were you willing to die for that group? Willing to kill for that group if you had to?
Yeah, I had been in situations where fortunately, I've never had to go to no extremes, but I have been in situations where my life was on the line, on a regular basis. And either way, either choice that you made, your life is on the line. Whether you make the choice to stand firm with your people, with the situation, or you decide, this ain't for me, now your life's on the line. So no matter which way you went, your life was on the line. And I believe that falls uh, on all of our shoulders in there, not white, black, Mexican specific, but everybody who walks those yards. That's your reality. Every day you might get called on. You being from New York, the New York guys might have a situation on the yard, and you might not care one way or the other about its reason, but you belong to that car. You belong to that situation.
Well, sometimes, Kyle, like I can have a good conversation with you because you've been there, you experienced it. There's times now where I sit back and I think about Adam Oliveri, and I think about Stevie Burke, and I think about Dennis Mooney and Ronnie DeVola. I think about all these guys, right? And I think like, damn, man, there was a point in time where when we were in Big Sandy, I was like, I was willing to do whatever. Like these were my dudes, and I didn't think about my mother and my family. I'm like, and I sit back and I'm like, wow, man. Back then, I would have killed somebody if I had to, and I would have been sitting on death row, just like Ricky. That I was willing to do that. And sometimes I think, man, was I a dummy, or was it just the environment? Like you said, when you're with wolves, you got to howl like a wolf, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, did it ever go through your mind? You ever sit back and think about, damn, man, what about my family, though?
And this isn't a pity party. I'm not a victim in any stretch, but I didn't have the family ties. And once I had went to state prison, the couple of family ties that I did, it wasn't long before time severed them. And when I went to the feds, now I'm across the country. My people can't jump in the car and take a drive and come visit me. I'm across, and not only that, but being on, in the penitentiary, you're getting locked down. I mean, I had a visit scheduled to come to Lee County to see me, and 30 minutes before my visit, shit kicked off on the yard. We're locked down. I'm not getting no visit. Now my people just spent all this money, time, and resources for a visit that got taken away like that by no actions of my own. So you start to get so distanced from reality, the reality of society with your family. Now I'm sharing a ramen noodle with two of my guys after a lockdown because we just got starved out so that we would comply with whatever shit they're trying to throw at us. And I mean, I can remember Florence sitting on the bench with a couple of my guys, hungry as hell. I had to go to a store, man, to get two noodles to split between 3 guys. We had to put them all in one bowl and sat there and took a couple bites and passed it around. That kind of struggle that you go through with people in there is unlike anything I've experienced out here. I'm married now, and me and my wife are in the struggle together, and we experience that, but not even remotely close to, hey, did you hear what happened over here with such and such and such and such? Get your knife, come out to the yard. Today might be the day that, you know what I mean? Serious acts of violence are committed to or against ourselves, and it creates a, man, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of creates a euphoria, man. You almost get an adrenaline rush, and you get this feeling, especially when it happens. It's one thing to sit here, me and you, tell you, Chad, I got you. No matter what you ever go through, you need me, call me, I drop everything, I got you. And to actually call me and say, Kyle, I need you. Now it's time to cash that check. And then I show up. And, when I show up, that's instantly going to create a bond that I feel like can't be broken. Because how do you forget somebody who saved your life? How do you forget somebody who got you off of drugs, who got you in physical shape where you can be proud of yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and go, damn, I earned this shit. You can't really forget that.
And you were around some pretty serious dudes. I mean, let's make no mistake. AJ's well known all over the system. Chad, Sutherland, Raz, like I know all these dudes too. And being around them dudes, I have to say that AJ, for me, was probably one of the more intimidating. Not that I let him know that at the time, but when I first got to Big Sandy, he was one of the first dudes that had kind of approached me. And he was not a big dude, but intimidating the way that he talked, or you kind of felt like, man, this dude's talking, and that deep in his heart, he's probably a killer. And you can just recognize that just from the discussion. And I was a little intimidated by him. I don't say that lightly because I'm not intimidated by many people. But me walking into Big Sandy, hearing the stories, and he calls me over to the fence, one of the first dudes. And I'm like, yeah, I can see it. This is the dude that I felt like they talk about in movies, to a certain extent, like he's a dangerous dude. And then I hear about the stories in Lee County. They kicked the Border Brothers' head off over there, and he gets a new case. That dude lived, and I mean, he lived what he believed, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And, he's paying for that. And, we used to call it, and I'm sure you've heard this, maybe a different term, but, we used to tell guys, man, you got that look in your eye, comes from a Friday movie, but that penitentiary look in your eye, and you could see it when you go into transit and you're mixed in with a conglomerate of all custody levels. You can tell a penitentiary guy over any other custody level inmate, and it's, you get that look in your eye. And I feel like that look comes from, I don't know, there's many allegories I can convey, but if you see somebody you love being hurt, and your anger rises, and you see red, and you're, a lot of guys in there, they carry that look with them every single day, everywhere they go. And it's because they're like a simmering bowl of a pot of water, that the slightest increment in temperature, and that shit's boiling over. And like you said, I had met numerous people where, even in state prison, I had met people that were dangerous, that had the look of danger, where for no real reason could I tell you why I felt it, but it was there.
I mean, just like when something happens in the penitentiary, you feel it. I mean, it's a feeling that you can't. It's a dance that you can't understand unless you ever had them shoes on and had to dance that dance, right?
Absolutely. And I, after seeing, when I was, back up a little, when I was first in Coleman State Prison, never seen somebody get a knife put in them. Seen a couple fights, last a couple seconds. Once somebody catches a good blow to the head, they're okay, all right, and they hug it out, and they smoke a cigarette, and they walk the track. When I was in federal prison, man, it was to the hilt, and I mean that literally and figuratively. Whether you're using hands and feet, whether you're using a weapon, you don't stop. There is no stop. You're gonna get sprayed. When I first went in, they weren't spraying; they were jumping on you, and in some cases, guys were hoping they jumped on you, because that might make the difference if you make it out of there with life and limb or brain damage or whatever else. Eventually, because there were so many guys that were beating the shit out of the police when they would jump in the fray, uh, you know, they came out with the OC spray, and it was spray these motherfuckers until they stop. Don't get involved, just spray them, because guys were beating the shit out of the COs, and then they're trying to prosecute them, but they can't, because how can you expect a guy fighting for his life to just shut it off because you're a CO and you came from behind him and grabbed him? You know what I'm saying? And yeah, so it was a go tell there's until you can't go no more, you know.
I think that also there's probably plenty of dudes that COs have saved from a life sentence. Guys that had the cops not showed up may have kicked that guy that one last time or stabbed him that one last time, and now they're on death row like Snar and people like Ricky Fackrell, right?
Yeah, well, I've seen a lieutenant and Lieutenant Bingford and Coleman, uh, pistoleros were stabbing up another Mexican dude, and that dude wasn't trying to get away. He was trying to give them what they were looking for, and he's getting stabbed, and he'd hit one, and he'd fall, and the other one would start stabbing. He'd turn around, start getting on him, and all the COs were just standing there. Stop the assault! Stop assaulting him. And that lieutenant made it through the metal detector, and he jumped headfirst in, put his arms up and jumped right in there and got in there and stopped the situation from happening.
You put in work before, right?
Yeah.
Plenty of it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Every yard I went to, something always found its way. And the ugly truth is, when I was younger, I seen it as an opportunity to let people see not only that I would go, but what I was capable of. And that usually deters people if they can see that you got hands, that you can handle yourself. It might deter a bully or a predator from trying to come your way. And I remember always looking for shit, like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, he's making funny, he's got funny answers to our questions, and there's got to be something going on there. I'm gonna go pack my stuff, and if he don't got the right answer, you know what time it is. And then all of a sudden, I had a old head tell me, like, man, life's hard enough in here, man. Stop looking for shit, dude. It's gonna find you. And you might go a year, you might go 2 years and not get a shot. You might, be on easy street. He said, enjoy that shit. But being young, I was so determined to try to, no, this is an opportunity for me. Anyways, um, he wasn't lying, man. Eventually I went, 18 months with no tickets, no shots. And then all of a sudden it was like, I'm taking the team to support something, that guys are doing. And then I'm in the hole, I'm fighting my cellie because they put me in the cell with a piece of shit. And then I get to the next yard and I go out there and there's somebody out there I got problems with, and I'm back in the fucking hole. 6 weeks later, I'm back on the yard. A bus comes, another guy comes, and you know, I went my bid went in phases, and uh, I only made it Lee County 1 year. I only made it McCreary 1 year. I only made it in Coleman 1 year. You know, yeah, that
Get
was
tired? You ever get tired?
yeah, I got extremely tired, and ironically, I had went to the SMU program 2011. I didn't get out of there till 2013, and I thought that would have done it. I thought that would have tired me out. Anyone who's been to the SMU knows it's tiresome. And I've heard guys on here make comments before about fighting their own cellies that they're actually friends with or brothers with, and that's the reality of being in that cell. And you would have thought that I had had enough at that point, but I hit Pollock, Louisiana, and now I'm on a yard. The USPs are starting to simmer down somewhat because of the SMU program, and they're starting to case people to try to deter people from things. But when I got to Pollock, uh, it was like a war zone. As soon as you walk out the door, everybody's beating on the windows. That's to let everybody know a bus is coming. Then you're under the scrutiny of every single set of eyeballs in that prison watching you walk from that lieutenant's office to whatever unit you're going to. Now everybody's in their unit going, oh yeah, this guy, he had tattoos, bald head, he looks like this, that. 9 times out of 10, they know you're coming. SIS has already told everybody this guy's coming, this is what he is. But now you got to wonder, do I got enemies out here? You know what I mean? And in Pollock, it was so relaxed where you could put work in go to the lieutenant's office, sit in the holding cell for an hour or two, and because they don't have enough room in the hole because people either won't come out or can't come out, they just kick you right back to the yard. So you don't have a very strong deterrent for anyone to be like, well, I don't want to go to the hole. You know, you go to the hole in Allenwood, you'll sit in that fucking hole in Allenwood for 8, 9 months. You know, it created a momentum there of violence where it wasn't shit to carry a knife. It wasn't shit to go to another unit. It wasn't shit to get into a fist fight. It really wasn't shit to stab somebody. And so lo and behold, thinking I'm, refined, the SMOO program, knocked my dick in the dirt. It's got me feeling like I want some yard time. And 6 days later, I'm on the handball court boxing, going to chow with a broke nose and with no problems. I got 2 black eyes and a broke nose. The other dude's fucked up walking around with both eyes beat shut and never got asked a question about it. So that led me down a rabbit hole of, oh shit, now I can vent off anger and frustration. Now I can do this. Now I can do that. And I'm not going to go back to the SMOO. I'm not going to get a case. And he had everybody walking around that yard with that mentality,
Yes, it is. Were you in Florence when that riot kicked off or no?
No, I was in Coleman when that happened, but I remember them pulling us off the yard, a group of guys, and trying to inquire because it was all over the news and shit. And they had tried to inquire, is this going to follow? Is this going to trickle over? And obviously, whether it was or it wasn't, which it didn't, and thankful for that. But as you and I both know, you don't go tell the lieutenants, the administration, yeah, it's going down, that was another learning experience there. You don't talk to the COs by yourself. You just don't do it, which was always funny to me because how many people you and I both know take their buddy up there to go do some telling.
Yeah, I can mention a guy named Coon. He used to do that all the time. Do you know Coon? Tennessee?
No, I don't.
Terry
I don't
Arthur.
know him, but I know of Spike, right? And he's a prime example that comes to my mind.
Spike is too. Let me ask you this, right? Because earlier you talked about, sometimes you were just looking for it. You had a bro that I felt was that way in Big Sandy, Danny. He was always looking for some shit, always creating an issue, right? Wasn't living by, the Aryan religious movement. This cat just wasn't, man. He was just, it seemed like he victimized a lot of white dudes. And eventually his card plays, I don't know if you can even talk about this, but, the word is that, when he was in Pollock that he took off on one of your bros. He didn't stay there when something happened. And then, he ends up in Big Sandy and he's back being this super tough dude. He wasn't a little dude. He had some size with him. But eventually, I think he's in the SMOO program. And because of that, he gets worked. And I end up seeing him years later. How does it feel when, you got a dude that was up there with you guys and you were willing to die for, and there's other dudes involved also that have kind of separated themselves for whatever reasons or back history? What does it feel like when, it was a dude that you were cool with, man, and now they're like a dropout or, they done something different?
Well, that feeling came to be way too familiar. That is, what you're talking about. That element is probably 70% certain that that's what the end result's going to be. A lot of people go into things in there for the wrong reasons, and you take a docile, timid, very quiet individual and you put them in a group or a car or a gang or whichever label you want to give it, and they become the toughest motherfucker out there. They got the biggest mouth, and it's because the politics say, hey, I'm this. If you're not this, you can't put your hands on me, or all this is coming with it. And guys try to capitalize on that, and a wise man will see through that and they will get rid of that element. Unfortunately, it doesn't always happen. Sometimes guys will overlook things because they want the numbers, they want the missile, we call them, because you can pull the trigger and that guy will go. So we're going to let him get away with this, we're going to let him do this, we're going to let him do that. But that's not the way that things are supposed to go, man. And unfortunately, in there, people are so spread out. Not everybody's always going to be on the same page. Anywhere I was always at, despite because I've been told not to do stuff way more than I ever was, encouraged to do anything. Uh, and that saved my life. A lot of good men saved my life. They saved me from myself, you know. And I know you've probably been in situations very similar where, you're just kind of like, this is what I'm going to do. And somebody who cares about you enough, who isn't, bloodthirsty, wanting to see the next random act of violence, will actually thwart you and say, hey, man, it's not worth it, you know?
Contrary to popular belief, right? There are a lot of dudes in prison that are good dudes. There's a lot more good dudes that made bad choices in the street than there are bad dudes. There are dudes in prison that want to see bloodshed, and that just comes from their ignorance, where they want to be like, "Yo, man, we need to kill this dude." I'm gonna, and there's some shot callers that do that. They'll
Yeah.
send dudes out on dummy missions where now they end up with life sentences.
Yeah.
But before we get ready to go, I want to, and we may very well do a part two because I think there's a lot of stuff that we can still talk about. Look, man, not being arrogant, but I feel like I know the BOP from the administration down to the prisoners, down to the gangs. Like, I don't know, man. Sometimes you just get it, right? And you're one of them dudes that when I talked to you initially, I'm like, this dude gets it. He understands. But I want to ask you one of the most important questions, right? What's the most important thing in your life right now? In your life, what's most important?
Man, the most important thing in my life right now, and maybe cliche, is my wife, man. I got a girl that I've known since I was 11 years old, who, when I went to prison, uh the second time, um, she changed her whole life for me, man. And she built a life for me. And I came home to, a couple thousand, not that material things matter, but it's what work this woman put in to provide for me to come home and make a good transition. I came home to a house fully furnished with every gadget that I need, technological or otherwise. She bought me a car, a couple $1,000s in clothes over the last few years, 6 pairs of shoes, work boots, networked with people where I reside for me, on behalf of me, so that when I came home, I already had introductions out of the way. And met with my parole agent and demonstrated a healthy lifestyle and a healthy household for me to come to home to. And the most important thing for me is my devotion, my loyalty to that woman. Um, and then the other part is she's on the same path. She's been to prison. She's on the same path that I am. She became a peer support recovery specialist. She got a gym membership. She educates. She's sober, and together we both feel obligated. Not even obligated, because I feel like that makes it sound negative, but we feel compelled to spread the message of what life can look like if you go the wrong way, and also what it can look like if you go the right way. And the only way I can show people what it looks like to go the right way is to go the right fucking way. You know what I'm saying? Um, to leave the gang shit behind, to leave the prison politics behind, which is hard. It's hard, man. It's hard to go from, you know, over a decade of living one way and having your life hinge on how you live that way. And then coming out here, you got no friends. You're stereotyped into being something you're not. The friends you do have are spread out and they're going through the same shit that you're going through. So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but my
Did
wife.
answer my question because you know what? I've talked to some other people where they pretty much, they still live in the street and they still live prison politics. And they're like, yo, man, I've interviewed dudes on here that got kids and they talk about, yo, my gang's number one. I'm still this and I'm still that. And, no disrespect to you or to A.R.M or any of them dudes. And like I said, a lot of them dudes were serious dudes. But now, man, when you're older, you have to start thinking back like, look, this is what matters, bro. Freedom, the people that are there for you. And I asked you earlier, once upon a time, you were willing to kill for this organization or this gang or this car or this group, whatever we want to label it. And now you see the light, man, that this is what's most important. I don't get on here and tell war stories. I mean, you know what car I rode with and who I was
Yeah.
around. And you know what? I wasn't the baddest man on the planet, but I was all right with my hands. And I don't get on here and tell them war stories because that's not what it's about, man. The
Exactly.
shit that we live, the shit that we seen, that's what changed me. I don't never want to go back to that environment, bro. I don't never want another dude like Stevie Burke telling me what to do. He's my shot caller. This dude's getting high, man. He's telling me what to do. No, I don't want to be in a position with Adam Oliveri where he's on the air talking about, hey, I'm about to kill this dude. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like, we're with you. Never thinking about the consequences. And, I wish I would have had the Ricky Fackrell story back then. Maybe I would have thought different. And, maybe I would have ended up at Coleman too at that time. Who knows what would have happened? Not that I would have debriefed or anything like that, but just that I just want to live my life, man. I got a wife and I got 2 little boys that need a dad. Absolutely. And that's all I want to be, man. I want to be free and I want to be a father and I want to be a husband. And I asked you that question to get back to my point is I want to know what's most important. And it's not a got you question where, are you going to say your gang? No, I want you to say the truth, bro, because you're a truthful dude and you said what you needed to say. And I want that to resonate with other people, that this is what's important, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, and that's my only intention, out here is to try to get the message. I didn't have a platform last time. I didn't have a network last time to try to get this message out there. But man, I was that 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid in and out of juvie, went from claiming one gang in one neighborhood that wasn't even, my own people and risking my life, my whole life for everybody else. But I've never actually risked it for myself, and that's what I'm out here to do now. I'm out here to risk life for myself. I've already got a job. I became a welder. I have a CDL. I have all these things going for me. And if I can find a way to show youth don't want to really hear shit, you know what I mean? But guys that have been to the county, guys that maybe have been to the state that see this channel, I just got out of state prison. I was explaining to guys in there the lackadaisical time that they're doing and that already being 2-3-time loser in the state, if you end up in the feds, you're about to have a life-changing experience and it's going to be too freaking late for you to back out of it, And so if the message can be given, then people can embrace that message and realize, like men like yourself, other men that have done interviews with you. I seen a Native American guy did an interview with you. He talked about some stuff at Hazleton. That shit's real, man. It's not. It ain't a dream that people are. Oh, I had this dream. This happened. No, that shit really happened. And I'm grateful, man. I'm blessed. I'm grateful that I don't have to live that life and that I don't have to go back to that life.
That's what's up, man. I'm gonna get ready to close the show, man, and just thank you for coming on. And I want people to know this. Make no mistakes about it. You were a well-known dude. You put in plenty of work, some violent incidents, but you're a different man now. You changed your life. You realize what matters. And
Absolutely.
that's the message. And I definitely appreciate you coming on, bro.
I appreciate what you do, Chad.
I appreciate you. Tell people if they like what we're doing, man. Hit that like button, and you know what? Share this video because someone probably needs to hear this. Fuck the views, man. It's really about, hey, someone needs to hear this message. So I definitely appreciate you, man. With respect, Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow.
Sure. Thanks, Chad.